Hello, I'm Betty Hollister, Public Information Manager with the Regional Flood Control District, and welcome to another edition of the Flood Channel. The district is proud of the many flood control projects already in place and the record number of projects we currently have under construction. While we've accomplished a lot, we still have a long way to go to complete our mission. So let's take a look at the progress we're making on today's show.
Hi, I'm Eric Carrington, and I'm going to take you on an exclusive down and dirty tour of a flood control project that moves dangerous floodwater safely through the area, dumping it into channels and detention basins and eventually Lake Mead. You are going to be amazed at how massive this underground system is.
And I'm Carrie Ann Mokopathy, enjoying an afternoon walk on this trail alongside the Buffalo Channel. This is just one channel that flows through the valley and eventually meets up with the Las Vegas Wash. But how did this trail get built along a flood control facility? What kind of safety precautions should you take when using trails like these? And how is the sale of BLM land helping fund these projects? I'll have the answers coming up.
Thanks, Eric and Carrie Ann. All that, plus a new segment called Flood Facts on this edition of the Flood Channel. Welcome back to the Flood Channel. If you've watched our program, you've seen lots of construction video of just a few of the many flood control projects we're building. So on today's show, let's take an up-close look at how these complex projects come together. Eric goes underground to tell the story.
Betty, I'm going to start my report above ground where viewers are used to us talking about construction projects. But most flood channels are buried under roads using boxes like these. I'm standing in an 18-foot wide by 8-foot high reinforced concrete box. Each one of these boxes weighs a staggering 61,000 pounds or about 31 tons. When a severe storm hits the valley, water can rush through these at up to 25 miles per hour. But how do these boxes make their way underground? Let's find out more at a major construction project in Henderson that uses these boxes. So Steve, why don't you give me an overview of this project?
The Pittman Railroad East Conveyance project, what we call it, consists of it's about $11 million project, approximately 2,000 linear feet of precast RCB boxes that we had to install.
What are some of the unique challenges putting a project like this together?
Some of the boxes, especially the boxes at the end of the channel, are heavy. They weigh about 61,000 pounds each. It makes the work quite difficult.
So that brings up an interesting question. Talk to me about how you actually get these boxes into the ground.
First off, we've got to get the boxes here.
Okay.
The boxes currently are at Rinker Materials. Haul the boxes over on a flat bed tractor trailer, and then we've got a big 350-ton crane that lifts each individual box off of the truck, and we set the boxes out in front of the railroad tracks.
Well, this project is really going to affect the community, a lot of folks in the community. It must be rewarding to be a part of a project like this.
It really is. The project has taken about a year to complete, and this flood control channel that we're building here comes within 100 feet of the existing park, the Arroyo Grande Sports Complex.
Okay.
And it is nice to know that we have helped to eliminate potential flooding to not only the existing park, but also to protect houses and the community from potentially the yearly flooding, not to mention the 50 or 100-year flood.
Wow. Well, we really appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. I know you don't need good luck, but we wish you a lot of luck.
Hey, thank you very much.
All this is very impressive, but while this project is wrapping up, there's still a dozen more construction projects underway. Let's dig deeper.
Once a project begins construction, it usually takes about 8 to 12 months to construct that project. It depends on the complexity of the project, where it's located, is it in a road, do we have traffic issues, etc. Generally, it's a lot quicker to build an open channel than it is an underground structure. That's mostly due to an underground structure is almost always in a road. We have to deal with traffic issues, which means you have to route traffic around your work site. You have to deal with pedestrians that may be walking down sidewalks. There's always a lot of utilities in roadways, and so we have to deal with relocating those utilities. And with open channel, it's a lot easier to build because the corridor is more open with an open channel. But keep in mind that we're building these facilities in a flood risk area. We're building a channel in a natural wash usually, and so we have the exposure to the elements there. You can have a flood during construction that can set your project back. Well, the type of facility we build is really dependent on where it's located, what kind of corridor we have to build the facility. For example, if we have a natural wash that we're going to improve, we have a nice open corridor there to build a facility, and we can use open channel there. A lot of our flows are located in roads though, and so we have to pick those flows up and get them underground. We don't have any room to put an open channel down a roadway, and so we have to put underground facilities in for those types of flows. Well, we currently have 13 projects under construction, including this project here, the Railroad East Conveyance System, which is about to wrap up construction. We have 4 projects that are about to begin construction. They've already been advertised, and we're waiting to award those projects to the contractors and send them out to construction. And we have 1 project currently that's out to bid right now. One of the problems we had with this project is that we have to go through the railroad corridor, and the Union Pacific Railroad will only allow the contractors they approve to do that work. And so we have 2 contractors that are going to be completing the work. So the first contractor has built the facility all the way up to the railroad right of way, and now we're waiting on the second contractor to come in and actually finish the facility through the railroad right of way. There's one business that uses this railroad, and they need a tanker car of chlorine every day. And so we're really limited on the timing of getting the facility put into the ground where the railroad is. And so they gave us 52 hours. We have to go in, remove the track, excavate, put the boxes back in, backfill it, put the track back, all in a 52-hour window.
There are hundreds of miles of underground storm drains and channels throughout Clark County. A big message from the flood district is to just stay away from these areas. If a storm hits, being in a storm drain or channel could cost you your life.
I think it's important that everybody realizes you would not have your kid play in the water in the gutter in front of your house. It's nasty, it's dirty, it can cause diseases. Our channels are out there to handle flood flows and also takes care of this nuisance water. These channels are dangerous. We see cars being swept away on streets. Can you imagine how fast you'd be swept away when the water's flowing 3-4 times as deep as what's in the street, and then flowing 5 times to 10 times faster than what's in the street? I mean, we have channels that are flowing up to 30 miles an hour. You stand no chance of surviving that situation. A lot of our facilities are underground. They're behind block walls. They're out of sight, out of mind. So if you do get caught in that environment, your chances of being rescued are slim or none. And it almost is sure death if something like that does happen.
Well, you know, a lot of miles and miles are kind of just gray walls and darkness and not much in there, but you'll see some debris that washes in occasionally, you know, big rocks. I mean, the power of the floodwater is amazing. I've seen 2-ton rocks in these flood channels. Most interesting to me were discovering that people, you know, were living down in these flood channels. When Josh and I went down into the tunnels initially, we were not expecting to find people in these channels because, as you know, they can fill 1 foot per minute with floodwater if it's raining heavily. So that was the biggest surprise to me.
We have recorded channels rising 7 feet in 8 minutes. We have seen detention basin rise 12 feet in 12 minutes. It's a recipe for just a disaster. It's a very tough situation with homeless living in the box culverts underneath the streets, kids still playing in channels. All we can do is keep re-emphasizing and reinforcing that message about flood safety. I mean, we're telling people don't drive through areas. It only takes a couple feet of water to move your car. It takes less water to move a person.
One of the reasons I explored the tunnels and wrote the book was to bring awareness to the fact that there were some people living down in there, and maybe that awareness would lead to some kind of help for them. And it never really came, after, a year and a half after the book was published, some minor efforts were being done to help the people in the flood channels, but nothing really coordinated. So I reached out to Help of Southern Nevada, a local charity organization, and they were very receptive to my idea of me kind of escorting some of their social workers into the underground flood channels and offering assistance to the people living down there. So we've been doing that for about 6 or 7 months. We've placed, 15 to 20 people from the tunnels into housing, so we're really excited about that.
Our mobile crisis intervention team goes out into the valley. We seek out chronically homeless, disabled individuals. We attempt to build relationships with those individuals, try to remove any of the barriers that have forced the individual to remain homeless for as long as they have. But we had never really penetrated deep into the tunnels. And once we were able to get into the tunnels deeper, I was very, very surprised to see the amount of individuals that I was encountering deeper within the tunnel system. Yeah, as of March, which is when we began really making a heavy push into the tunnels themselves, we've successfully permanently housed 16 individuals. We've gathered enough information to enter another 35 individuals into the homeless management information system. And we have probably had contact with some 100 individuals and are still in the relationship building stage with those folks.
They all have their own stories of being down there asleep when the rain has crept over the mountains, or even when it's raining in the mountains and the floodwater is carried into the Central Valley. They have these Tom Sawyer-like stories of being on their mattress and being washed away. And as you know, there's been several drowning deaths in the valley over the past 20, 25 years. And some of those people have been the ones who hang out or live in the flood channel. So they're well aware of the flood dangers.
They've come into the tunnels for a number of different reasons. Most folks are experiencing feelings of paranoia, and they come down into the tunnels because it offers them some sort of solace or refuge from the world above. Unfortunately, when they get down here, they find it's a lot more difficult. The feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness that we encounter down here is absolutely tremendous. And when somebody's been down for so long, it's very difficult to make them feel that there is an upside to their life. Out of the 16 folks that we've removed from within these tunnels, we consider these the most service-resistant population that we work with. We just recently had an individual who has been down in the tunnels for about 4 years that has not only been removed from this environment, he's so far kicked his drug habit, he's reunited his relationship with his daughter and his family, and he's moved into his first apartment in what he told me was 13 years just last week. And he was an individual that was removed from one of these tunnels who we consider a success story at this point. The feeling is absolutely remarkable.
It's a difficult thing to try to keep people out, because if we try to keep people out with grates or other methods, then it's going to help stop the flood flows from flowing through. The grates are going to fill up with trash and debris, and the system and the investment that we made becomes worthless. So we got to keep these systems open, and we have to educate the people, the parents, the homeless, the children, everybody about just staying out of these dangerous areas.
Safety is a top priority at the district, and we want everyone to understand that you need to steer clear of storm drains and channels. It's also important to report clogged storm drains, as well as debris that you might find in our washes and channels. Call the district to report it, and we'll be back with more on the flood channel right after the break.
Jess, time for dinner, sweetie.
Oh. Oh, what's up? Whoa. Oh, no. Yeah.
Stormwater and anything you spill into the street goes untreated into Lake Mead.
Whoa. Where am I now? Hey, Mom, my boat. Ew.
Help protect the environment. Brought to you by the Stormwater Quality Management Committee.
Why are storms in the desert so dangerous?
I think part of the problem comes from the fact that we live in a desert. And if people haven't lived here long enough, they focus on the obvious, that we don't get a lot of rain. And while that's true, in the summer, we get intense, localized storms that can cause flash flooding, even in areas where it's not raining. In the winter, while the storms may be more moderate, they cover a larger area and last a lot longer. In both cases, the runoff collects in the streets as it works its way into the storm drains and channels. People need to be aware of and respect the power and danger of flowing water.
I'm Matthew O'Brien, author of the book Beneath the Neon, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. Across the county, many of our flood control facilities are being used for an additional purpose. They're being used for recreation. Parks and trails are being built, in many cases with money from the federal government. Let's take a stroll with Carrie Ann for this story.
More and more flood control facilities are doubling as recreational areas, like this trail built along the Buffalo Channel in the northwest part of the valley. While that's a huge plus for taxpayers, there's safety concerns too. This area is part of the Lone Mountain Trail, planned from Summerlin Parkway north to Alexander Road. Tax dollars paid for the Flood Channel. The sale of BLM land is helping pay for the trail system. It's all part of a federal law called the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act.
When we're talking big picture, we're certainly talking about the partnership between the Flood Control District, our member agencies, and the federal government. The Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act created a fund where, when the private sector purchased federal lands, money was set aside to put back into our community. So when we look at some of our detention basins around town, we get a double bang for the federal dollar. A, we get to access those for flood basins, public facilities, parks, for literally nothing. And then secondly, the snipplem of dollars that were coming back in allowed us to use those federal dollars to do recreational amenities in and around these parks. That beneficial use, being able to tap into the basins, literally because they're dry most of the year, and get that joint use. First and foremost, they're there to protect our citizens from floods. But secondly, we've been able to come in using federal dollars and be very aggressive in creating these recreational amenities that help with the quality of life. So we do get a double bang for the federal dollar and really have tapped into the snipplem funding. It's been a win-win situation.
We really love having this park in our neighborhood. I have two small children, so we come here quite often. And my family enjoys walking in the evening along this trail next to the channel, which our tax dollars pay for. It's good to know our tax dollars are working for us.
We are standing on a trail located on Vegas Drive that skirts along the Angel Park Detention Basin southward on Durango past Summerlin down to Alta. And it is a multi-use trail, meaning that it can be used by both pedestrians and bicyclists. Part of the design process for trails or anything really along flood control facilities is to take into account the safety. That's number one for public safety. And so therefore we follow the guidelines that are set up by the Regional Flood Control District, which includes signage, and it has to have specific language, as well as fencing or certain grading guidelines to ensure public safety.
This is a special park because it is literally at the western end of the valley in the city of Las Vegas in the County District C. Behind us is all federally protected land, so nothing will ever happen behind us. And surprisingly, not too many people realize in the northwest part of the valley there's a tremendous amount of equestrian riders, a lot of horses. And when the urban part of the city of Las Vegas came up through this area, there was a real desire to protect and preserve some of those rural areas. And we've done that through land use maps and good planning and zoning. But we also had to enable the equestrian riders who for decades have considered this their home, the ability to still get to this part of the valley. SNPLMA provided us with $4.5 million to create what you see here today. And it's wonderful. Right here is a catch basin. It serves as almost a catcher's mitt because, again, people don't realize if there's a storm up in this area, this water is going to come flying off the mountain and right through the residential area. This is part of the district's purpose, is to protect that, to stop the water, let it gather, and then we put it underground. It gets into our channels. We have 82 detention basins throughout the valley. We have over 500 miles of underground channels and native washes. So when we capture the water, we can then manage the water through the entire valley and ultimately back to Lake Mead.
This trail is built along the berm of this Angel Park Detention Basin, and the berm itself has been designed as at a safety height taking into account the 100-year flood depth that would occur in this basin, ensuring that the public would be safe since they are on top of the berm itself. The big picture is that eventually when all of these trails are built, you can travel from one side of the Las Vegas Valley to the other on a trail system.
When it comes to our joint use facilities, or even something like a catch basin, people have to use common sense. That's probably the single most important message we get out there. If it's raining, or certainly if there's a threat of a thunderstorm, move away from these areas. Try to get home. You don't want to be driving, and certainly if you're in one of our parks, our joint use facilities, and you see it starting to rain, move away from the lower areas. Get up to safety, see what happens with the storm itself, but safety always is a priority. If you go back to some of our significant storms over the last decade, people will literally go into our basins with canoes, and skateboarders will try to, beat the rain, and it's just common sense again has to prevail, because we cannot and we do not want to literally put fencing around all our facilities to imprison that detention basin, because then we lose the opportunity of what we just talked about. The tens of millions of dollars that taxpayers have saved through our approach to joint use these facilities. And tens of thousands of people, especially local people, have been able to get the benefit of that joint use.
Betty, the bottom line is when severe storms hit the valley, channels like these serve their purpose by carrying dangerous floodwater through developed areas. But when land alongside the channel can be safely used for biking, jogging, or just taking a stroll, that's a win-win for everyone.
Thanks, Carrie Ann, and we'll be back with more on the Flood Channel right after this.
I'm Agent Smith.
I'm Agent Jones.
And we're back busting people who pollute Clark County.
Oh, sir, you're gonna have to come with us.
What have I done now? Sir, did you know by washing your car at home puts chemicals and trash into storm drains?
Really?
Car washes recycle water and they don't pollute Lake Mead.
Oh.
Is Clark County your home?
Yeah.